Virgin Media slapped with £23.8 million fine after endangering vulnerable customers in landline upgrade. In a major ruling on December 1, 2025, Ofcom imposed a £23.8 million fine on Virgin Media after concluding that the telecom operator put vulnerable customers at direct risk of harm during its transition from analog to digital landlines. Police car light: what went wrong? Telecare customers left at risk. The critical failures stemmed from how Virgin Media handled customers relying on telecare alarms, devices that depend on a landline connection to call emergency services or alarm monitoring centers in the event of a fall or urgent health incident. During the migration between August 2022 and December 2023, Ofcom found that Virgin Media failed to properly identify and record which customers were using telecare alarms, meaning many vulnerable users were not flagged for additional support. Disconnected some telecare-reliant customers completely, including those who did not respond to the migration process, leaving their alarms disconnected and unable to reach emergency services. Did so despite being aware of the potential dangers, in breach of its obligation to treat vulnerable customers with extra care. Ofcom described the failures as serious systemic failures, and concluded that Virgin Media breached consumer protection requirements for vulnerable users. Abacus: the penalty, and why it matters. The £23.8 million fine reflects the severity and duration of the breach, as well as the vulnerability of the customers affected. However, the fine was reduced by 30% because Virgin Media self-reported the incidents, admitted its failings, and cooperated with the investigation, Ofcom's Director of Enforcement, Ian Strawhorn, commented. It's unacceptable that vulnerable customers were put at direct risk of harm and left without appropriate support by Virgin Media, during what should have been a safe and straightforward upgrade to their landline services. Virgin Media has 4 weeks to pay the fine, which will then be transferred to the UK Treasury. White heavy checkmark: what Virgin Media has done since, and the changes now in place. In response to the findings, Virgin Media says it has taken steps to prevent similar failures moving forward. Among the measures introduced: a manual reassessment of customer records to properly identify telecare users, a direct outreach effort, contacting nearly 43,000 telecare customers, to offer support and facilitate the safe transition to digital landlines. Implementation of enhanced support and communication procedures, including additional in-home support, clear guidance, and post-migration checks. Working with local authorities, telecare providers, and government partners to improve awareness and create a safer migration framework for vulnerable people. Virgin Media stated. While historically the majority of migrations were completed without issue, we recognize that we didn't get everything right and have since addressed the migration issues identified by Ofcom. What this means for telecom providers and vulnerable customers. This enforcement action sends a clear message across the telecommunications industry. When upgrading infrastructure, especially essential services like landlines, companies must proactively safeguard vulnerable customers such as elderly, disabled, or telecare users. Transitioning from legacy networks, like copper-based PSTN, to newer digital systems cannot come at the expense of user safety. Proper identification, communication, and support must be ensured. Regulators like Ofcom are ready to penalize large operators harshly if systemic failures result in actual risk of harm. For customers who rely on telecare devices, this incident highlights the risk of migration if not handled carefully, and the importance of oversight and transparency during network upgrades. Light bulb: wider implications and lessons to learn. The case underscores the human cost of digital migration when undertaken without adequate safeguards for vulnerable populations. What might seem like a technical upgrade can become a safety issue if users lose access to emergency services. It shows that self-regulation is rarely enough. External oversight, as done by Ofcom, is crucial to ensure consumer protection. Finally, the ruling may influence other telecom providers, both in the UK and globally, to review and update their migration protocols and customer support policies to prevent similar failures.